All stories published by Epic Yarn are fictional works intended for mature audiences. These narratives are submitted by a diverse community of contributors and subscribers created solely for entertainment and storytelling purposes. They do not represent real events or individuals, and no claims of factual accuracy are made. Additionally, all accompanying images are generated using AI technology to visually enhance the fictional experience. Sometimes love doesn't show up the way you imagined. Sometimes it shows up when you're finally ready to see yourself. Whole, messy, real, worth loving.
Chapter 1. The Arrival. The gravel cracked under Caleb's boots as he stepped out of the van, sun catching in his sandy blonde hair like it had a personal vendetta. The retreat's center sat nestled between thick pines and the wide sweep of the mountains, green, untouched like something sacred. It smelled like pine needles and fresh air, with just enough damp earth to make you feel alive. He inhaled deep and slow. God, he'd missed this place. Kids' voices echoed from the mess hall up the slope, their laughter bouncing like music. Behind him, other volunteers trickled out, some stretching stiff limbs from the drive, some already unpacking gear from the van. Caleb offered easy smiles and greetings, the kind of charm that came second nature. Then he saw him. A tall guy stepped out of the second van. Dark brown hair, crisp fitted coat, calm posture, almost too composed, like he was bracing himself. His features were sharp, striking, cheekbones made for close-ups, eyes a cool shade of gray that looked like they'd never blinked in a storm. Caleb had seen a lot of beautiful people. This guy made beautiful look inconvenient. He raised a brow as the guy scanned the retreat, like he was evaluating the space for flaws. Or escape routes. Caleb strolled over, adjusting his duffel on his shoulder. Hey, first time. The guy looked up from his phone. Yeah, I'm Caleb. Returning disaster wrangler and unofficial camp DJ. The man gave a faint nod. Owen. Nice to meet you, Owen. You look like you just walked out of a magazine. That'll last about a day. 2 tops. Owen blinked. Excuse me. Caleb grinned. The mountain will humble you. Wait until your boots are soaked and you're helping a 10-year-old tie-dye a shirt while they cry about missing their Wi-Fi. Owen gave the tiniest twitch of smile. Sounds charming. Oh, it is. You'll love it, Caleb said, tipping his head toward the cabins. Come on, I'll show you where the beds squeak and the showers don't quite work. Owen hesitated. I can manage. Caleb raised his hands. Suit yourself. Just don't blame me when you end up bunking next to Josh. He sleep talks in multiple languages. Owen smirked just slightly. I'll take my chances. Caleb didn't say anything more. He walked off, but something lingered behind his eyes. A flash of interest, of knowing. He'd seen people like Owen before. The ones who kept themselves wrapped tight, like any softness might unravel them. He didn't know why, but he wanted to know what would happen if someone just let him be soft. Later that day, during orientation, they were paired up for cabin prep. Of course they were. Owen wore crisp jeans and a black tee that probably cost more than Caleb's entire week of meals. He moved with this quiet precision, folding bedding like he'd been raised by choreographers. Caleb dropped a mattress with a dramatic thud. Do you always do things like you're being graded? I like things orderly. Spoken like someone who's never had a raccoon steal their breakfast bar. Not sure what to do with that information. Caleb laughed, low and real. You'll learn. They worked in silence for a while. Comfortable for Caleb, perhaps less so for Owen. Eventually, Caleb glanced over and said, So what made you sign up? Owen looked at him for a beat too long. Needed a break. That's vague. I'm a vague person. Caleb leaned against the bunk post, arms crossed, smile just crooked enough to be dangerous. We'll see. That night, after dinner and introductions, the volunteers sat around the fire pit under a darkening sky. The mountains loomed, quiet and protective. Someone passed around marshmallows. Someone else played a soft rhythm on a gem. Owen sat apart, not quite joining, not quite leaving. Caleb caught his eye across the circle. Just a flicker. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He just held Owen's gaze for a second longer than necessary. And then he looked away. It wasn't a moment you'd notice. Not unless you were looking for it. But it was enough. Something had started, and neither of them had any idea what it was going to become. Chapter 2. Cracks in the Mask. By the third day, Owen's clothes had lost their crisp edge. His hair was still neat, but a little wind-blown from the afternoon hikes. The mountain air worked like that, slowly wearing down pretenses, replacing them with sweat and sun and the undeniable reality of nature. Caleb noticed the change in subtle ways. The rolled sleeves. The way Owen didn't flinch when a kid wiped sticky hands on his jeans. The way he actually laughed, low, reluctant, but real, when one of the boys at his workshop declared him a vampire who reads too much. They were paired again for afternoon activities, this time running a confidence-building game that involved blindfolds, a rope maze, and, somehow, glitter. Caleb took the lead with ease, tossing directions like frisbees. Owen, predictably, stuck to the edges at first, voice low, movement efficient. "You know," Caleb said, as they gathered the ropes after the last group, "I didn't think you'd last past day one." Owen looked up, arching an eyebrow. "Oh, you've got that energy," Caleb said, looping the rope around his arm, "like you're constantly calculating an exit strategy." Owen tilted his head. "Maybe I am." Caleb grinned. "Wouldn't blame you. Some of these kids have stronger opinions than my ex." A flicker passed through Owen's expression. Was that curiosity? Amusement? "You talk about him often?" Owen asked. "Only when he shows up in my Spotify algorithm," Caleb replied with a shrug. "You—" Owen hesitated. "I don't have an ex." "Seriously?" "I haven't had the time. Or the nerve." Caleb paused, rope slack in his hands. "Nerve?" Owen's lips twitched like he was about to lie, but didn't. "I don't do well with letting people in." There it was. A sliver of something honest. Vulnerable. Caleb didn't push. Just nodded. Later that evening, after dinner, the staff had free time. Some played cards. Others drank cheap beer under the stars. Caleb found Owen near the fire pit again, this time sketching something in a small black notebook. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle him. "Didn't peg you as the campfire type." "I'm not," Owen said, not looking up. "But I like the light." Caleb crouched beside him. "What are you drawing?" "It's nothing." Owen closed the notebook too quickly. "That's a shame. I bet it's something." Owen finally looked at him, eyes unreadable. "Do you always do that?" Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Do what?" "Push. Assume there's something behind every wall." Caleb leaned back, hands braced behind him in the grass. "Only when I'm pretty sure I'm right." Owen stared at him for a moment, then exhaled. He opened the notebook and turned it toward Caleb. It was a sketch of the firelight reflecting in water, the lake probably, but there were two silhouettes standing near the edge. Not detailed, just lines. One had wild hair, the other, unmistakably neat posture. "Is that us?" Caleb asked. Owen looked away. "It's just a study." Caleb smiled. "You're a romantic. I'm a realist." "Then why draw the light?" Owen didn't answer. Silence stretched between them. Not heavy, just charged. Like something new had begun forming, quiet and slow. Caleb broke it, softer than usual. "You know, it's okay if you're scared." Owen's voice was low. "I'm not scared of you." Caleb nodded. "Then what are you scared of?" Owen didn't answer, but he didn't look away either. The fire crackled behind them. The stars blinked on, one by one. Caleb didn't push again. He didn't need to. The cracks were already showing. And through them, something real was starting to shine. Chapter 3. Shared Silences. The rain came down in sheets, fast and sudden. Mountain weather was moody like that. The kids had already been herded into the mess hall for a movie night, and the volunteers were scrambling to stash gear, run towels, and stop small rivers from forming under the cabin doors. Caleb had just kicked off his boots when Owen stepped into the volunteer cabin, dripping wet, hair flattened against his forehead, shirt clinging like a second skin. For once, his posture wasn't perfect. He looked real, human, a little wrecked. "Jesus," Caleb muttered, grabbing a towel from the drying rack. "You look like the opening scene of a disaster movie." I was halfway back from the dock when it started. Owen took the towel with a grateful nod, rubbing it over his arms, chest, and hair with quick, efficient movements. "You could have called for help," Caleb said, trying not to stare. failing a little. I'm fine. You're soaked. I said I'm fine. Caleb looked at him for a beat. Then, quieter, didn't say you weren't. Owen paused. Something softened. Caleb crossed the room, pulled out a dry sweatshirt from his duffel, and tossed it to him. Here. It'll smell like campfire and cheap detergent, but it's dry. Owen looked at it, then at him. Thanks. He peeled off his wet shirt without ceremony, revealing a lean chest, pale skin dusted with dark hair, rain sliding over muscle and collarbone. Caleb turned away, too quickly, and busied himself at the small stove. Tea. Something to do with his hands. I didn't know you play guitar. Owen said suddenly, his voice quiet. Caleb glanced back, surprised. You heard me the other night? I couldn't sleep. Caleb smiled to himself. Yeah, me neither. A pause. Then Owen said, You were good. The song. It felt like someone was trying to say something they'd been holding in for too long. Caleb didn't answer right away. He just handed over a steaming mug and leaned against the counter. That's kind of the only way I know how to write. Owen took a sip, eyes on the mug. It's easier to say things when no one's looking. Caleb tilted his head. You mean when no one's looking at you? Owen met his gaze then, and for the first time since they'd met, didn't look away. Yeah. The wind howled outside. Rain pounded the tin roof in rhythm. They stood in silence. Not awkward. Not empty. Just there. Two boys, 25, in the middle of nowhere, carrying things neither had yet named. Caleb finally broke it. What are you thinking right now? Owen hesitated. Then, that I've spent a lot of time pretending I don't want things. Caleb swallowed. Like what? Owen's voice was a whisper now. This. Whatever this is. Their eyes stayed locked. Neither moved. And then, Owen stepped back, breaking the line between them like he'd touched something too hot. I should change, he said, his voice lower, guarded again. Caleb nodded, slow. Yeah, of course. Owen walked to the far end of the cabin, towel around his waist, Caleb's sweatshirt still in his hand, but not yet worn. Caleb stared at the empty space he'd left behind, heart beating faster than it should have. He didn't know what they were yet, but he was starting to understand what he wanted. And for once, that scared him more than anything else. Chapter 4. The First Kiss. The night was crisp, cooled by the earlier rain, the stars clearer than they had any right to be. The kids were asleep. The air smelled like wet pine, firewood, and distant lilac. Caleb sat on a flat boulder near the lake, strumming his guitar, quiet, thoughtful notes that never quite formed a full song. He didn't expect company, but when he heard soft footsteps crunching over the pine needles, he didn't look up. You always sneak out alone after lights out? Owen's voice, low and close. Only when I'm avoiding myself. A beat of silence. Then Owen moved closer, sitting a foot or two away on the boulder. Not too close. Not too far. I heard you playing again, he said. Caleb plucked at a single string. Yeah. It sounded like longing. Caleb chuckled softly. You get that from one note? No, Owen paused. From your eyes the past few days. That made Caleb look up. Owen was watching him, really watching him, like he had stopped trying to guard himself, just for a second. Something in Caleb's chest flickered. You're different here. I don't know who I'm supposed to be here, Owen said quietly. That's probably a good thing. Caleb set his guitar aside. Why'd you kiss me in that sketch? Owen blinked. What? Caleb gave a half smile. The one you showed me. Two figures by the lake. One leaning in. I saw it. Owen didn't deny it. I was curious. About what it would feel like. Owen turned away, but didn't answer. Caleb reached out and gently touched his wrist, fingers brushing over skin that had never been touched like that by him before. Owen didn't move. You ever kissed someone and felt like it might change everything? Caleb asked. Only in theory. Caleb leaned in slightly. Want to try the real thing? Owen looked at him, then full on. Every wall gone. Eyes wide, hesitant but open. I don't know what to do with you, he whispered. You don't have to, Caleb said, voice low, lips so close now the air between them barely existed. Just do something. Owen closed the distance first. The kiss wasn't perfect. It was soft at the start, lips barely brushing, like they were still afraid to fall into it. Then it deepened, slow and searching. Owen pulling in, Caleb tilting his head, their mouths fitting like they'd been waiting for this exact shape. It tasted like night, like rain, like every word they hadn't said finally landing. When they pulled apart, neither spoke. Owen's chest was rising and falling fast. Caleb's hand lingered on his jaw, thumb brushing beneath his ear. "I didn't expect this," Owen said, breathless. "Me neither," Caleb said. "But I've wanted it." Owen stood abruptly. "I need to think." Caleb blinked. "Okay, I'm not used to this," Owen said, his voice cracking just slightly. "Wanting something, getting it, not knowing what to do after. You don't have to figure it out tonight." But Owen was already backing away. "Good night, Caleb." And then he was gone, into the trees, into the dark. Caleb stayed on the rock, fingers brushing the strings of his guitar, but not playing anything. He could still feel the kiss. It hadn't solved anything, but it had started everything. Chapter 5, Unraveling. The next morning, everything felt off. Caleb saw Owen across the field during the morning hike prep, standing tall, calm, unreadable. Like the kiss never happened. Like it hadn't changed a thing. Caleb tried not to let it show. He handed out water bottles, cracked jokes with the kids, led a stretching circle, smiled like his skin wasn't buzzing with questions. Owen didn't avoid him. That would have been easier. He nodded when their eyes met, spoke when he had to. But it was the absence that hurt, the absence of that softness from the night before, of the quiet electricity that had passed between them all week. By mid-afternoon, it boiled over. They were alone behind the cabin, cleaning paint trays after a particularly chaotic art session. Owen scrubbed in silence. Caleb couldn't take it. "So, we're just going to pretend nothing happened." Owen froze. "We're working." "Yeah, that's all we've done since you kissed me. You asked for it. I didn't ask you to disappear." Owen dropped the tray into the tub hard. "I didn't disappear. I'm right here." Caleb stepped closer, voice low, sharp. "No, you're not. You pulled away the second it got real. Was it a mistake?" Owen's jaw flexed. "I don't know what it was." Caleb laughed bitterly. "That's convenient." "Don't," Owen said, his voice trembling now. "Don't make this some cheap drama." "I'm not," Caleb snapped. "But I let you in, Owen. I don't do that often. I showed you something real. And what am I supposed to do with that?" Owen said, louder now. "I've spent my whole life building walls to survive. You kiss me under the stars, and suddenly I'm supposed to become someone else." Caleb stared at him. His voice softened, but didn't lose its weight. "No, but you could try being yourself." Owen looked away. "I don't know who that is." Silence fell, the kind that doesn't beg to be filled. Finally, Caleb said, "You think I've got it all figured out? That I walk around smiling because life's been easy? I learned to fake it so people wouldn't see the parts of me that were terrified, the parts that still are." Owen's voice cracked. "You're brave." "No," Caleb said. "I'm just tired of hiding." A beat. Then Owen stepped forward, slow and hesitant. "I wanted to kiss you again this morning," he whispered. "But I was scared you'd look at me differently. Like I was weak." Caleb reached out, gently touched Owen's wrist. "You're not weak. You're just human." Their fingers intertwined. This time, the kiss came without permission, without build-up, urgent, messy, honest. Owen gripped Caleb's shirt. Caleb buried his hand in Owen's hair. They pressed together like they were holding on in a storm. They stumbled inside the empty cabin, breaths heavy, lips red, hands searching. They didn't make it to the bed. They dropped to the floor, tangled in each other. It wasn't perfect, bodies bumping, nerves crashing into desire, but it was real. Owen whispered things into Caleb's skin like confessions. Caleb kissed, every word like a promise. Afterward, they lay chest to chest on the worn floor, Owen's fingers tracing patterns on Caleb's back. No talking, just breathing, just being. It wasn't love yet, but it was something just as terrifying. It was truth. Chapter 6, The Retreat Ends. The last morning of the retreat always carried a strange kind of silence, part exhaustion, part denial. Volunteers packed slowly, kids lingered with tearful goodbyes and awkward selfies, and the air tasted of wood smoke, wet grass, and something like grief. Caleb watched Owen from across the gravel path, bag slung over one shoulder, notebook tucked under his arm. He was talking to one of the teen campers, smiling faintly, nodding, kneeling down to tie the boy's shoelace before sending him off toward the van. The same hands that had held Caleb's hips the night before now moved gently, precisely. Caleb had barely slept. Owen had left the cabin before dawn. No note, no kiss, just his warmth still clinging to the floor where they'd fallen asleep. When the last bus pulled away with a blur of waving arms and misty windows, the camp suddenly felt too quiet. Caleb found Owen near the lake again. Same rock, same silence. You leaving soon? Caleb asked, sitting beside him. Couple of hours. Caleb nodded, looking out at the glassy surface. You okay? Owen hesitated. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Say what you want to. Owen turned to him. This week has been more than I expected. Same. I didn't think someone like you would even look at someone like me twice. Caleb gave a small laugh. I haven't stopped looking. Owen's eyes dropped to his hands. I've spent so much of my life building this version of myself that doesn't ask for things, doesn't risk anything. Then you come in with that crooked smile and your sunburned heart. And Caleb placed a hand on his thigh, steadying. Hey, I'm still here. Owen swallowed hard. But for how long? That stung more than it should have. Is this the part where we say goodbye like nothing happened? No, Owen said, finally meeting his eyes. This is the part where I ask you something scary. Caleb's heart thudded. Okay, if I came to your town, would you let me in? Like really let me in? Caleb blinked. You want to visit? I want to know if what we had here survives outside of this place. Outside of the quiet and the trees. Outside of just you and me. Caleb leaned in, touched Owen's face with the backs of his fingers. I live near the ocean. I make bad coffee but good playlists. I like walks at night and putting my feet in cold water. You'd hate my kitchen. It's a disaster. I already hate your t-shirts. Caleb grinned. You haven't seen my pajama pants. Owen exhaled, something shifting in his expression. A smile. Small. Fragile. Real. You sure you're ready for that? Caleb asked. Owen didn't hesitate. No, but I'm tired of waiting until I am. They didn't kiss. Not this time. Instead, they stood in silence, shoulder to shoulder, watching the lake. Then Caleb said, Come find me. And Owen, voice low, steady, replied, I will. Later, as the vans pulled away in clouds of gravel dust, Caleb stood by the cabins and watched Owen's reflection shrink in the window. He didn't wave. He didn't need to. Something had started. Now the question was, would it survive the space between? Chapter 7, Apart. It wasn't until Caleb stood barefoot on the shoreline of his hometown beach, salt wind in his hair, gulls calling overhead, that he realized how different everything felt. The water was still the same sharp blue. The sky still lit up in tangerine at sunset. But he had changed, and Owen wasn't here. Back home, it was easy to slide into old patterns. Old smiles. Caleb cracked jokes with his friends, bartended part-time again, picked up his surfboard like nothing had shifted. But it had. It pulsed under his skin like heat lightning, quiet, electric, waiting to strike. Every song on the radio reminded him of the way Owen had kissed him. How careful it had felt. How scared. How honest. Every moment alone made him wish Owen had stayed. In the city, Owen sat by the window of his tiny apartment, notebook in his lap, untouched coffee cooling beside him. Outside, the buildings loomed, gray and familiar. Inside, his thoughts were chaos. He buried himself in his psychology readings, took extra shifts at the youth center, doodled in the margins of his notes. But everything felt thin, like he was watching his own life through glass. One night, after a mentoring session, he stayed behind to clean up. A teen named Micah asked, You okay, Mr. Gray? You look kind of heartbroken. Owen laughed softly, bitter at how accurate it was. Yeah, he murmured. Kinda. That night, he posted a poem anonymously to a queer literary forum. It read, He kissed me with the rain still on his skin, like saltwater forgiveness, like he knew I'd leave, before I figured out how to stay. It got more replies than anything he'd ever written. One reply simply read, Go to him. Caleb read the poem 3 days later. He wasn't even looking for it, just scrolling late at night, half drunk on cheap red wine and nostalgia. But the moment he saw it, he knew. It was his kiss. Their lake. And Owen's voice, quiet and bruised, behind every word. He stared at the screen for a long time, then picked up his guitar. Didn't play, just held it. The ache in his chest wasn't just missing someone. It was wanting to be missed back. Neither of them reached out. Not yet, but they thought about it. Every morning, Caleb looked at his phone, thumb hovering. Every night, Owen walked past the train station, wondering what a ticket south would cost. Not in money, but in nerve. Both afraid, both hoping the other would make the first move. And somehow, both not ready to let go. Not yet, because the space between them wasn't just miles. It was fear. It was longing. It was unfinished business wrapped in silence. But something was building beneath it all. Something slow. Something certain. Something like love. Chapter 8. Finding each other. It was a Thursday afternoon when Caleb walked out of his local cafe, iced coffee in hand, and nearly collided with the last person he expected to see. Owen, standing there on the boardwalk, suitcase beside him, sun glinting off his dark hair, wearing jeans and a navy button-down that looked too warm for the weather but too perfect to take off. His expression was unreadable, part nervous, part searching. But his eyes, they were locked on Caleb like he'd finally found land after drifting too long at sea. Caleb didn't say anything right away, just stared, stunned, every thought tangled in a rush of he came, and don't ruin this, and is this real? Owen cleared his throat. I figured if I didn't do something, we'd both keep waiting for the other to be brave. Caleb blinked, heart pounding. You came all this way. I wanted to see if I still saw you the same outside the trees. Outside the silence. I didn't tell you I was coming because I wasn't sure if I'd have the guts to actually knock on your door. Caleb smiled, breathless. Lucky I ran into you then. Was hoping I would. There was a long pause, charged open. Seagulls cried overhead. The ocean broke behind them in slow, lazy waves. Then Caleb stepped closer, close enough to touch. Do you still want this? Owen's voice dropped. Yes. God, yes. So Caleb kissed him, in full daylight, on the crowded boardwalk, with strangers passing and music playing from a street performer nearby. He kissed him like he'd been waiting to finish a sentence they'd started in another language. Like he didn't care who saw. Owen kissed back like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. When they pulled apart, Owen rested his forehead against Caleb's. I'm still figuring everything out. So am I, Caleb whispered. Let's do it together. Later that evening, they sat on Caleb's back porch overlooking the sea. The sky burned orange, casting long shadows. Owen had his legs pulled up to his chest, barefoot, a mug of coffee in his hands. You know, Caleb said, I thought about you every single day. I wrote about you, Owen replied. Every line was a way of keeping you close without saying your name. You didn't have to. I knew. They were quiet for a while. Just the waves, just the breeze, just a breath between them. Then Owen asked, so what now? Caleb reached over, linked their fingers. Now, we live. We talk. We fuck up. We try again. We figure out what it means to show up every day. For ourselves. And for each other. Owen looked down at their joined hands, then up at Caleb, smiling, really smiling. That sounds terrifying. Yeah, Caleb grinned. But also kind of incredible. A quiet backyard, late summer. String lights sway in the breeze. Friends laugh off screen. Music hums low. Caleb and Owen are slow dancing, barefoot in the grass, arms wrapped loosely around each other. No big speeches, no dramatic declarations. Just two boys who kissed in the rain and figured out how to keep choosing each other, even when it hurt. The camera pulls back as they move together, cheek to cheek, the porch light glowing behind them. Fade to black.
If you've ever found yourself through love, or learned to love yourself through someone else, drop your story in the comments. You never know who needs to hear it. Let's build a world where every queer story gets to be told, where no one has to love in the shadows anymore.